Every species ran away, but humanity stayed and fought. Part 5. The silence moved through space like a wound in reality itself. Fleet Commander Daehyun watched it approach on his displays, and every instinct screamed at him to run, but the hundreds of ships around him held position, a united front against the impossible. Existence anchors at maximum power, reported Venthar. All ships confirm ready status. Fire when in range, Daehyun ordered, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. The first wave of attacks launched. Human railguns combined with Kaloran quantum disruptors streaked toward the silence. The projectiles hit the void and simply stopped existing, erased before they could do damage. Energy weapons fared no better, their beams disappearing into nothing. Anchors are holding, Dr. Mina reported from the science vessel stationed behind the battle line. The silence can't erase ships within the anchor fields, but we can't damage it from this distance either. Admiral G1 made the decision instantly. All ships advance. Get close enough that the anchors overlap with the silence itself. If we can't hurt it from here, we hurt it from inside its own territory. It was insane. It was suicide. It was exactly what humanity had done against the Devourers. The fleet moved forward as one. As they crossed into the silence's influence, reality began breaking down. Sensors gave impossible readings. Time moved strangely, seconds stretching into hours or compressing into instants. Ship hulls flickered, threatening to unmake themselves. But the existence anchors held. Barely. The fields pushed back against erasure, creating bubbles of stable reality in the chaos. Now, Daehyun shouted,
"Fire everything."
At close range, where the anchors could protect the weapons until impact, the hybrid technology finally worked. Quantum disruption rounds tore into the silence, creating visible damage. Energy beams stabilized by existence fields burned against the void. The silence recoiled, actually pulling back from the assault. "It's working," someone shouted. Then the silence adapted. Reality warped in impossible ways. Ships that were kilometers apart suddenly collided. Crew members on one vessel found themselves on another with no transition. Entire squadrons simply switched positions. 3 Themec battleships merged into a single twisted mass of metal and screaming. "Maintain formation," Admiral G1 commanded, though formation had become meaningless when space itself no longer followed rules. "Focus fire on the densest regions." Sora led her fighter squadron through the chaos, her hands moving on instinct because thought was too slow. Her targeting computer had given up trying to make sense of the battlefield. She flew by feel, trusting her training and reflexes. "Blue Squadron, form on me," she called. Her pilots responded, their fighters converging despite the reality distortions. They dove toward a particularly dark section of the silence, weapons firing continuously. The fighters were small enough and fast enough to avoid the worst effects. They could get closer than the big ships, hit harder, retreat faster. Sora pushed her engines beyond safe limits, feeling the fighter shake around her. "Too close," her wingman shouted. "Sora, pull back!" She ignored him. Her fighter's existence anchor was at maximum, creating a tiny bubble of stable space around her. She armed her quantum bombs, the most powerful weapons humanity and the Kaloran had developed together. 4 of them, each capable of destabilizing entire sections of spacetime. "Tell them I made a difference," Sora transmitted. Then she flew directly into the heart of the silence and released every weapon she had. The explosion was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Quantum energy mixed with existence anchor technology, creating a cascade reaction that ripped through the silence like fire through paper. The void screamed, if something like that could scream. Reality reasserted itself violently, space snapping back into normal configuration. Sora's fighter vanished in the blast. So did 17 other ships caught in the shockwave. But when the light faded, a massive section of the silence was simply gone. Not erased, but destroyed. Hurt in a way it had never been hurt before. "It can be killed," Daehyun breathed. "It can actually be killed." The battle raged for 36 hours straight. The Allied fleet lost hundreds of ships. Entire crews sacrificed themselves in suicide runs, following Sora's example. The Kaloran war sage Venthar died when his vessel's anchor failed, taking the brave captain and his crew. The Irani lost their flagship protecting a damaged human cruiser, finally understanding what it meant to fight for others. But slowly, impossibly, they were winning. The silence retreated for the first time in millions of years. The void shrank, reality pushing back, reclaiming space that had been erased. Dr. Mina, exhausted and covered in blood from wounds she didn't remember getting, made a final breakthrough. "It's not immortal," she reported to Admiral Jiwan. "It's just very old and very powerful. But it can be wounded. It can be driven back. Maybe even killed given enough time and weapons. How much time? Years, decades. This isn't a battle we can win today. But we can make it run. We can buy ourselves time to prepare for when it returns." Jiwan nodded. That was enough. Humanity had never expected to win every fight. They just needed to survive them. The final assault came 40 hours after the battle began. Every remaining ship converged on the Silence's core, the densest part of the void where reality was thinnest. They fired every weapon simultaneously, thousands of quantum disruptors and existence anchor missiles striking as one. The Silence collapsed inward, folding back on itself, and then it was simply gone. Not destroyed, Daehyun knew, just driven away, wounded and retreating to heal. But it was gone. Silence of a different kind filled the communications channels. Then someone started cheering. Then everyone was cheering, crying, laughing with relief and grief and exhaustion. They had done it. The galaxy had stood together and faced the ultimate threat, and they had survived. The aftermath took years to process. Memorial services for the fallen lasted months. Sora was posthumously awarded the highest honors from 20 different species. Monuments were built. Songs were written. But the real work was just beginning. The Galactic Union reformed completely, reorganized around principles of mutual defense and shared sacrifice. Humanity's tactical doctrines became standard teaching at every military academy. The concept of tactical persistence, refusing to surrender even when victory seemed impossible, became the foundation of galactic military philosophy. Captain Daehyun, promoted to Grand Admiral, oversaw the rebuilding of the galaxy's defenses. He established a permanent watch at the edge of explored space, warning systems designed to detect the Silence if it ever returned. He trained a new generation of officers from 100 different species, teaching them that technology alone couldn't save them. Courage, creativity, and the refusal to quit mattered more than any weapon. Dr. Mina continued her research, now working with scientists from every Union species. They studied the Silence, preparing for its inevitable return. They improved the existence anchors, made them more powerful and efficient. They developed new weapons, new tactics, new ways to fight the impossible. Ambassador Taeyang became the Union's chief diplomat, working to keep the fragile alliance strong. Species that had fled during the Devourer crisis now stood as equals with those who had stayed. The shame of that retreat had been washed away in shared sacrifice against the Silence. 10 years after the battle, Earth was fully rebuilt. The scars of war remained visible, but they were monuments now, reminders of what humanity had survived. Cities thrived. Ships launched from expanded orbital yards. Children who had never known the fear of the Devourers or the Silence grew up in a galaxy that was safer because of what their parents had done. Daehyun stood in his office on Earth's orbital command station, looking at the stars. He was older now, gray touching his temples, lines of stress and command etched into his face. A young officer approached a human woman barely 20 years old. "Sir, the patrol reports are in. Nothing unusual." "Good, make sure they stay alert. The Silence will return eventually." "Do you really think so, sir?" Daehyun smiled grimly. "I know so. Things like that don't die. They just wait. But next time we'll be ready. We'll be stronger. Because we learned something important." "What's that, sir?" "That survival doesn't belong to the smartest species or the most advanced. It belongs to those who refuse to give up, who adapt, who stand together when things get dark." He gestured at the stars, at the thousands of ships from hundreds of species patrolling together. The Union ran when the Devourers came. We can't judge them for that. But when we stayed and fought, we showed them something they had forgotten. Fear isn't the enemy. Surrender is. The young officer nodded, not fully understanding but starting to. She would learn. They all would. Because humanity had taught the galaxy how to fight, and that lesson would never be forgotten. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Silence waited and healed. It would return. That was inevitable. But when it did, it would find a galaxy united and prepared. A galaxy that had learned from humanity that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand your ground and refuse to run. Humanity had stayed when everyone else fled. They had fought when fighting seemed pointless. They had held the line when the line should have broken. Every species ran away, but humanity stayed and fought. Part 4. The message reached every corner of the galaxy within days. Recordings of the battle, images of devourer ships breaking apart, the data about wildfire and how it worked. Humanity broadcast everything, hiding nothing. Ambassador Taeyang stood before the Galactic Union Council once more. This time the chamber was full. Every species had returned to hear what humanity had to say. "We defeated the devourers," Taeyang said simply. "Not with advanced technology, not with superior numbers. We defeated them with stubbornness and creativity. We adapted. We learned. We refused to give up." He paused. "But our victory is incomplete. Lieutenant Hisu discovered something before she died. The devourers were fleeing from something worse. Something called the Silence." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Chancellor Vareth raised his hands for quiet. "Explain," the insectoid leader demanded. Taeyang displayed the data Hisu had transmitted. "The Silence doesn't just destroy matter. It erases it from existence. Entire star systems simply cease to be as if they never existed. The devourers were desperate refugees, consuming everything to build strength against this threat. They failed, and now the Silence is coming." Fear rippled through the assembly. After a long silence, Vareth spoke. "When? 6 months. Maybe less. Then we must flee further, beyond this galaxy." "No!" Captain Daehyun's voice cut through the chamber. He had arrived unannounced, still wearing his damaged uniform from the battle. "Running won't work. The Silence is faster than you. It will catch you eventually. The only option is to fight." "How can you be certain?" demanded a Thymec representative. "Because I've studied the Devourer's data. They ran for centuries. It didn't matter. The Silence kept coming. If we run, we die tired. If we fight, we might have a chance." Admiral G1 appeared on the main screen, transmitting from Earth. "Humanity is offering an alliance. We share everything we learned fighting the Devourers. You share your technology. Together we develop weapons that can hurt the Silence. Together we make a stand." The debate lasted 3 days. Some species refused to consider it. The Varaxian Empire withdrew from the Union entirely, choosing to flee into dark space. But others listened. The Kaloran were first to pledge their support. The ancient species had fought impossible wars before. They understood that sometimes standing and dying was better than running forever. The industrial Thymec joined next, offering their manufacturing capabilities. Then the Orani, a peaceful species that had never fought a war, surprised everyone by committing their entire fleet. "We watched humanity fight alone," the Orani ambassador said. "We were ashamed. Never again will we abandon our allies." One by one, species pledged support. Not all of them. Not even most, but enough. The rebuilding began immediately. Earth was scarred but not broken. Cities rose from the ashes. Shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels that combined human and alien technology. Dr. Mina led a joint research initiative with scientists from 20 different species, all working to understand and counter the Silence. Captain Daehyun, promoted to fleet commander, oversaw the military preparations. He found himself working alongside officers from species that had fled while humanity fought. Some of them avoided his eyes, ashamed. Others thanked him constantly, which was somehow worse. "Stop thanking me," Daehyun told a young Kaloran captain named Venthar. "We didn't fight for glory. We fought because we had no choice." "That makes it more admirable, not less," Venthar replied. "My people have a saying. True courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Humanity showed us what that means. The Union reformed itself. Humanity was granted a permanent seat on the Central Council, equal to species that had been spacefaring for millennia. Some protested, calling it favoritism. Admiral G1 shut down the debate with 4 words. "We earned this seat." Nobody argued after that. 3 months after the defeat of the Devourers, the first hybrid weapons were ready for testing. Human railgun technology combined with Kelleran quantum disruptors created projectiles that could punch through dimensional barriers. Thymec manufacturing allowed production on a massive scale. Orani energy shielding protected the crews firing these new weapons. But it was the existence anchors that gave them real hope. Dr. Mina had developed them based on studying Devourer remains and data about the silence. The anchors generated a field that prevented matter from being unmade, essentially locking reality in place within a certain radius. It's not perfect, Mina admitted during a demonstration. The field only extends about 5 kilometers, and it requires enormous power. But it works. How many can we build? Admiral Jiwan asked. With Themec help? Thousands. We can outfit every ship, every station, every colony world. Then do it. We have 3 months. Meanwhile, Ambassador Taeyang worked to keep the alliance together. Tensions ran high. The Kaloran and Themec had ancient rivalries. The Irani struggled to adapt to military thinking. Human officers often clashed with alien commanders who outranked them but had less combat experience. Taeyang spent his days mediating disputes and his nights wondering if they were building an army or a disaster waiting to happen. A new face emerged during this time. Sora was 19 years old and had lost her entire family when the Devourers attacked Earth. She joined the military on her 18th birthday and proved to be a natural pilot. Within weeks, she was flying experimental fighters designed to combat the Silence's reality warping abilities. You're too reckless, Daehyun told her after she barely survived a training accident. Sir, with respect, we're all going to die anyway, Sora replied. I'd rather die doing something useful. Daehyun saw too much of himself in her. Too much of Hisu. He wanted to protect her but knew he couldn't. So instead he trained her harder, pushing her to be better, faster, smarter. If she was going to fight, she needed to survive. The Kaloran shared something during this time. Ancient texts, millions of years old, describing previous encounters with the Silence. The documents were fragmentary and hard to translate, but they told a chilling story. The Silence had attacked the galaxy at least 3 times before. Each time civilizations fell. Each time survivors rebuilt. But the Silence always returned. It's a cycle, Dr. Mina explained to the council. The Silence appears, erases vast portions of the galaxy, then disappears for millions of years. We don't know why. We don't know what it wants. We just know it always comes back. Then we break the cycle, Admiral Jiwan said firmly. Previous civilizations failed because they fought separately. We're united. That has to count for something. 2 months before the Silence's projected arrival, the defensive line was complete. A massive fleet spanning hundreds of species was assembled at the mid-rim, the buffer zone between core and outer territories. It was the largest military force in galactic history. Daehyun stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Indomitable II, and looked at the tactical display. Thousands of ships, millions of personnel, all of them ready to fight. Do you think we can win? Asked Venthar, now his second in command. Daehyun thought about Hyesu, about all the people who had died to get them this far. I think we have to try. That's all anyone can do. The Silence arrived early. Sectors began disappearing 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Not destroyed, not consumed. Simply erased as if someone had deleted portions of reality itself. Stars blinked out. Worlds vanished. Even the light from those regions disappeared, leaving voids of absolute darkness. The fleet moved to intercept, humanity and the Union fighting together for the first time. As they approached the growing void, sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. The Silence wasn't a fleet or an army. It was something fundamental, something that existed at the edge of reality itself. Looking at it hurt. Understanding it was impossible, but humanity had never let impossible stop them before. All ships, Admiral Jiwan commanded from the Joint Operations Center. Battle stations. Today we fight not just for our worlds, but for existence itself. Show them what unity can accomplish. The final war for the galaxy had begun. Every species ran away, but humanity stayed and fought. Part 3 Earth burned. From orbit, Captain Daehyun could see the fires spreading across the continents. The Devourers had broken through the outer defense line 3 days ago. Now they were systematically consuming everything, turning cities into raw material for their endless hunger. Admiral, we're down to 18 ships, Daehyun reported, his voice hoarse from smoke and exhaustion. The Indomitable had taken heavy damage, but she still flew. We can't hold them much longer. You don't have to hold them, Admiral Jiwan replied. Her face on the screen was covered in ash and blood. Behind her, the command center on Earth shook from nearby explosions. You just have to keep them busy. Hisu's team is almost in position. Lieutenant Hisu's transport drifted through the Devourer fleet, broadcasting stolen identification codes. Around her team, massive hive ships moved like predators through water, their surfaces rippling with biomechanical life. The largest one, easily 10 times the size of Earth's moon, pulsed with energy at the center of the formation. That was their target. 2 minutes to docking, whispered Corporal Jinwoo, piloting the stolen transport with steady hands. All 60 Marines in the cargo bay were silent, checking their weapons one last time. They wore modified armor designed to interface with Devourer technology, salvaged from captured equipment. It made them look like monsters, but it would let them move through the hive ship without immediately triggering immune responses. "Remember," Hisu said softly, "we're not trying to fight our way through. We move like we belong there, fast and quiet until we reach the Nexus. Then we deploy wildfire and make sure it spreads." Nobody asked what happened after. They all knew. The transport docked with barely a shudder. External sensors showed Devourer bioforms moving past them, ignoring the vessel as just another part of their fleet. Hisu took a deep breath and opened the hatch. The interior of the hive ship was like nothing she had imagined. Organic walls pulsed with faint light. The floor felt warm and slightly soft, like walking on living tissue. Corridors branched in impossible directions, defying normal geometry. Everything smelled of copper and electricity. "Stay close," she commanded, leading her team deeper into the ship. They moved in tight formation, weapons ready. So far, nothing had challenged them. Then the walls started moving. Devourer defense constructs emerged from the organic surfaces, insect-like machines the size of dogs with too many legs and weapons that crackled with energy. They swarmed toward the human intruders. "Contact!" someone shouted, and the corridor erupted in gunfire. Hiesu fired in controlled bursts, dropping constructs as they charged. Her team formed a defensive circle covering all angles. The constructs kept coming, pouring from hidden vents and doorways. Marines fell, screaming as energy weapons tore through armor. "Keep moving," Hiesu ordered. "We can't get pinned down." They ran through the nightmare corridors, leaving bodies behind. The hive ship's immune system was fully active now. Recognizing the intrusion, walls began constricting, trying to trap them. Automated turrets emerged from the ceiling. The temperature dropped rapidly, then spiked high enough to make their armor systems scream warnings. Outside, Daehyun led the remaining human fleet in a desperate assault. His orders were simple: draw the Devourer's attention, make them focus everything on the external threat. Give Hisu's team every possible second. "All ships full offensive," he commanded. "Nuclear weapons authorized. Ramming speed on my mark." The human vessels charged forward, firing everything they had. Missiles streaked through space. Railgun slugs hammered into Devourer hulls. 3 ships detonated their entire nuclear arsenal simultaneously, creating a miniature sun that vaporized 2 enemy vessels. The Devourers responded with overwhelming force. Energy beams carved through human ships like knives through paper. The battleship's soul exploded, taking her crew of 400 with her. The cruiser Gwangju lasted 3 seconds longer before breaking apart. Daehyun's ship shook from repeated hits. "Engineering, I need everything you've got." "Sir, we're at 110%. "Any more and the reactor will breach." "Then give me 120. We're not leaving until Hisu completes her mission." Inside the hive ship, Hisu's team had been reduced to 30 Marines. They had fought through 2 kilometers of hostile territory, losing people with every step. Jinwoo was dead, torn apart by defense constructs. Private Yunji had sacrificed herself to seal a corridor behind them, buying precious minutes. Sergeant Bora had held off an entire swarm while the rest escaped, firing until her ammunition ran out and then fighting with her bare hands. But they were close now. Hiesu could feel it. The organic walls pulsed with stronger rhythm, like approaching a massive heartbeat. The Nexus was near. They burst into a chamber that defied description. It was huge, easily a kilometer across, filled with organic pillars that stretched into darkness. At the center, suspended in some kind of energy field, was the Nexus itself. A massive brain-like structure, pulsing with light and connected to thousands of neural cables that spread throughout the ship and beyond, linking the entire Devourer fleet. "Deploy wildfire," Hiesu ordered. Dr. Mina's containment sphere was damaged but intact. They set it up quickly, hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. The device would inject the pathogen directly into the Nexus's neural network, spreading it to every connected Devourer in the sector. As they worked, Hiesu accessed the Nexus's data streams out of curiosity. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Devourers weren't conquerors. They were running. The data showed another threat, something vast and incomprehensible pursuing them across the galaxy. The Devourers were consuming everything not out of malice but desperation, trying to build enough strength to fight what hunted them. "Lieutenant, we're ready," one of her Marines said. Hyesu transmitted the data back to Admiral Jiwan with a single message. "There's something worse coming. Be ready." Then she activated Wildfire. The pathogen spread instantly. The Nexus convulsed, its light flickering. Through the neural network, Wildfire raced to every Devourer in the sector, attacking their organic components, disrupting their coordination. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Outside, Daehyun watched in amazement as the Devourer fleet began to falter. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly collided with each other. Energy beams fired wildly, hitting their own vessels. The massive hive ship shuddered and began breaking apart. "It's working," he breathed. "Hyesu, it's working!" There was no response. Inside the dying hive ship, Hyesu and her remaining team held their position as the structure collapsed around them. Defense constructs attacked mindlessly, their programming corrupted by Wildfire. The Marines fought back, protecting the pathogen deployment site until the very end. "Tell them we held the line," Hyesu said one final time into her transmitter. Then the Nexus exploded, and everything went white. The Devourer fleet disintegrated over the course of 6 hours. Ships turned on each other or simply shut down, drifting lifelessly. The threat that had consumed 17 worlds and terrified the entire Galactic Union was defeated by 61 humans who chose to die. "Rather than surrender, Admiral." Jiwan stood in the ruins of Earth's command center and watched the enemy die. Around her, people were crying and cheering. They had won. Against impossible odds, humanity had won. But Jiwan couldn't celebrate. She thought about Hyesu and her team, about the thousands of ships and crews lost in the fighting, about the price they had paid for survival, and she thought about Hyesu's final transmission. Something worse was coming. Jiwan accessed the data Hyesu had sent. She studied the images of the silence, the force that made the Devourers flee, and she began to plan, because humanity's war wasn't over. It had just begun. Every species ran away, but humanity stayed and fought part 2. The Devourers arrived at Busan Station exactly when predicted. Captain Daehyun watched them emerge from jump space like a swarm of metallic insects, each one the size of a small moon. They moved with terrible purpose, their surfaces rippling with something that was neither fully metal nor fully organic. "All ships, battle stations," Daehyun commanded. His fleet of 32 vessels looked pathetic compared to the approaching swarm. "Remember the plan. Get close, hit hard. Don't stop moving." The Union species had fought the Devourers at range, using energy weapons and hoping their shields would protect them. It hadn't worked. Admiral Jiwan's strategy was different. If they couldn't win with technology, they would win with violence. The first wave of human ships accelerated directly toward the Devourers. The enemy's energy beams tore through 3 vessels immediately, vaporizing them in brilliant flashes. But the remaining ships kept going, closing the distance until they were nearly touching the enemy hulls. Then they fired. Railguns launched solid metal slugs at a fraction of light speed. Nuclear missiles detonated against organic surfaces. Chemical explosives tore into the spaces between armor plates. The weapons were crude by Union standards, but at point-blank range they worked. A Devourer ship shuddered and split apart, its internal systems exposed to vacuum. Another one lurched sideways, trailing debris. It wasn't much, but it was more damage than the Union had managed to inflict in any single battle. "They're adapting," Hyesu shouted over the comm. "Forming defensive clusters." Daehyun gritted his teeth. "All ships, suicide protocol. If you're hit, ram them. Make every death count. The battle raged for 6 hours. Daehyun lost 21 ships. Busan Station was destroyed. Its 3 million inhabitants evacuated weeks before. But when the Devourers moved on, they left behind 7 of their own vessels, damaged or destroyed. More importantly, Dr. Mina had her samples. The scientist worked in a sealed laboratory for 3 days straight. Daehyun finally forced his way in, worried she would collapse from exhaustion. "Doctor, you need to rest." Mina didn't look up from her microscope. "They're biological." "What?" "The Devourers. Everyone thought they were machines, but they're not." "Not entirely." She gestured at the screen showing cellular structures. Look, this is organic tissue fused with metallic components. They're cyborgs, or maybe something that evolved naturally to incorporate metal into their biology. Daehyun stared at the images. Why does that matter? Because biological things can get sick. They can be poisoned. They can be infected. Mina's eyes were bright with exhaustion and excitement. The Union never thought to use biological weapons because they assumed the Devourers were pure machines. But they're not. We can hurt them in ways the Union never considered. How long to develop something? Weeks, maybe months. I need more samples, different types of tissue from different parts of their ships. Daehyun nodded. You'll have them. Admiral Jiwon's response to Busan Station's fall was swift and brutal. She didn't try to hold ground. Instead, she turned humanity's remaining colonies into traps. Mining stations were rigged with explosives. Ships were programmed to self-destruct when Devourers came close. Entire asteroids were turned into kinetic weapons, launched on collision courses with enemy vessels. The Devourers were efficient, but they weren't creative. They followed predictable patterns, expecting enemies to fight defensively. Humanity did the opposite. They ambushed. They retreated and attacked from new angles. They sacrificed territory to gain advantages. 2 more colonies fell, but each time the humans learned something new. Dr. Mina's laboratory filled with samples. She identified 3 distinct types of devourer tissue. She mapped their neural networks. She found their vulnerabilities. They're networked, she explained to Admiral Jiwon during a strategy meeting. Every devourer is connected to every other one through some kind of organic communication system. That's how they coordinate so perfectly. Can we disrupt it? Jiwon asked. Maybe, but I have a better idea. What if we could infect it? Create a pathogen that spreads through their network, disrupting their coordination and maybe killing them outright. Jiwon leaned forward. How long? Give me 6 weeks and all the resources humanity has left. You have 4 weeks and whatever you need. Because in 4 weeks they'll reach Earth. The galaxy watched. The Union had fled to the outer rim, but they monitored human transmissions with growing fascination. Species that had given up hope began studying human tactics. The humans were losing, yes, but they were losing slowly. They were making the Devourers pay for every system. Ambassador Taeyang's messages became famous across the galaxy. He broadcast from a hidden station, his words carried to every Union world. We are not heroes, he said in one transmission. We are not noble warriors fighting for glory. We are desperate people with our backs against the wall. But we have learned something important. The Devourers can be hurt. They can be killed. And if we can do it with our primitive weapons and crude tactics, imagine what the Union could do if they came back, if they fought alongside us. The messages stirred something in the Union. Debates raged on their council worlds. Some species argued for returning. Others insisted it was suicide. The Kaloran, an ancient species that had seen galaxies rise and fall, began quietly preparing their fleets. Meanwhile, humanity continued to fight. Lieutenant Hisu led a daring raid on a Devourer supply line, stealing not just samples but an entire intact bioprocessing node. The mission cost her half her squadron, but the intelligence gained was invaluable. Dr. Mina worked day and night, her team of researchers pushing the boundaries of xenobiology. They created 7 different pathogens. 5 failed completely. 1 killed Devourer tissue but spread too slowly. The 7th one, codenamed Wildfire, was perfect. It attacked the organic components of Devourer neural networks, spreading rapidly through their communication system, causing cascade failures in their coordination. There was just one problem. It had to be deployed directly into a Devourer hive nexus, the central hub that coordinated entire fleets. Getting close enough to one would be nearly impossible. Getting inside would be suicide. I'll do it, Yisu said when Admiral Jiwon explained the mission parameters. You understand this is one way? I understand. But someone has to. And I've lost too many friends already. Let me make their deaths mean something. Daehyun tried to talk her out of it. There has to be another way. There isn't, Yisu said gently. You know there isn't. The Devourers reach Earth in 2 weeks. This is our last chance. She assembled a team of 60 volunteers. All of them knew they weren't coming back. They spent a week training with captured Devourer equipment, learning to navigate their biomechanical architecture. Dr. Mina gave them the wildfire pathogen in a containment sphere, explaining exactly how to deploy it. The night before the mission, Hisu sat with Daehyun in the observation deck. "Tell them we held the line," she said quietly. "When this is over, whatever happens, tell them we held the line." Daehyun couldn't speak. He just nodded. The Devourer fleet approached Earth like a black tide. Admiral Jiwon's remaining forces, less than a third of what they started with, moved to intercept. And hidden among them, riding in a captured Devourer transport, Haisu and her team prepared for the most important mission in human history. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. Every species ran away, but humanity stayed and fought. Part 1. The emergency sirens echoed through the command center of New Seoul Station. Captain Daehyun stood before the holographic display, watching 17 red markers blink out of existence. 17 worlds, gone in 3 days. "Sir, incoming transmission from Union Command," said Lieutenant Hisu, her voice tight with tension. Daehyun nodded. The face of High Chancellor Vareth appeared on screen, his 6 eyes blinking in sequence. The insectoid leader of the Galactic Union looked tired, something Daehyun had never seen before in all his years of service. "All Union members are to begin immediate evacuation," Vareth said without preamble. "The enemy cannot be stopped. We estimate 4 months before they reach the core worlds. Every species must retreat to the outer rim. We will regroup and return when we understand how to fight them." 4 months? Daehyun felt his stomach drop. "Chancellor, humanity has 7 colony worlds. We have nowhere else to go. The outer rim is empty space for us." Vareth's mandibles clicked softly. "Captain, I'm sorry. But this enemy, these devourers, they consume everything. Matter, energy, even the fabric of space itself. Our most advanced weapons barely slow them down. The Kelleran had quantum disruptors. The Themic had molecular destabilizers. Nothing works. Evacuation is the only option." The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. 47 crew members stared at their stations, processing what they had just heard. The Galactic Union, 3,000 years old, spanning 12 sectors with technologies that seemed like magic to humans, was running away. "Get me Admiral Jiwon," Daehyun said quietly. The Admiral's face appeared within seconds. She was younger than Daehyun expected for someone commanding humanity's entire defense fleet, barely 40 years old. Her expression was cold and calculating. "You heard the order," she said before Daehyun could speak. "Yes, Admiral. What are our orders?" Jiwon was silent for a long moment. Behind her, Daehyun could see other officers moving frantically, screens displaying tactical data and evacuation routes. Finally, she spoke. "Captain, I'm about to make a decision that will either save humanity or doom us all. I need to know if your crew will follow orders no matter what." Daehyun looked around the command center. He saw fear in the eyes of his crew, but also determination. "We will, Admiral." "Good, because we're not evacuating. Humanity is staying. We're going to fight." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Hisu gasped audibly. Someone dropped a data pad. Daehyun felt his heart racing. "Admiral, with respect, we can't win this fight. The Union's most advanced species couldn't stop them." "I know," Jiwon said calmly. "But we can slow them down. We can learn about them. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to hurt them that the Union never thought of." She leaned forward. "Captain, the other species have hundreds of worlds. They can afford to run and come back in a century. We can't. If we evacuate, where do we go? We have no backup planets. No secret colonies. This is it. These 7 worlds are all humanity has," Daehyun understood. It wasn't bravery. It was mathematics. Humanity was too young in the galactic community, too new to space travel. They had put everything into their 7 colonies. Running meant abandoning their entire civilization to drift in space, hoping someone would take them in. "How long do we have?" Daehyun asked. 6 weeks until they reach our outer colonies. 3 months until they reach Earth." Jiwon's expression softened slightly. "I won't lie to you, Captain. Most of us will probably die, but I'd rather die fighting for our worlds than live as refugees begging for shelter." "Understood, Admiral. What are your orders?" "Convert everything into weapons. Mining stations become missile platforms. Civilian transports become bombers. Every person who can hold a gun gets trained. We fortify every single colony and make the devourers pay for every inch of space." She paused. "And Captain, I'm sending Dr. Mina to your station. She's our best xenobiologist. If anyone can find a weakness in these things, it's her." The transmission ended. Daehyun turned to face his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for him to say something that would make sense of this impossible situation. You heard the Admiral, he said. We're not running. I know this seems crazy. I know the smart thing would be to evacuate, but we don't have that option. So we're going to do what humans have always done when backed into a corner. We're going to fight like hell. Nobody cheered. This wasn't that kind of moment. But slowly, one by one, his crew nodded and returned to their stations. Over the next week, humanity transformed. Every news channel broadcast the decision. There were protests at first. People demanded evacuation ships. They called Admiral G1 a murderer. But slowly something changed. The protests turned into recruitment drives. Factories that made consumer goods started making ammunition. Scientists who studied peaceful subjects began designing weapons. Ambassador Tai Yang addressed the Galactic Union one final time. The massive chamber, usually filled with representatives from 247 species, was nearly empty. Most had already left. We understand your decision to retreat, Tai Yang said, his voice echoing in the emptiness. We do not judge you for it. But humanity will stay. We will fight. Not because we think we can win, but because we have nowhere else to go. We ask nothing from you except this. Remember us. Remember that when the darkness came, humanity stood and faced it. The few remaining ambassadors said nothing. Some looked sad. Others looked confused. A few looked at the humans like they were watching someone commit suicide. Dr. Mina arrived at New Sol Station 3 days later. She was small and thin, with tired eyes that suggested she hadn't slept in weeks. She carried a single case of equipment. Captain Daehyun, she asked. That's me. Welcome aboard, Doctor. I need access to any devourer remains you can get me. Anything. A fragment of hull, a piece of debris, even molecular residue. I need to understand what they are. We don't have anything yet. They haven't reached us, Mina smiled grimly. They will. And when they do, I need you to get me samples. No matter what it costs. The last Union ships departed 2 weeks before the devourers were scheduled to arrive. Daehyun watched them jump away, leaving humanity alone in the darkness. 7 small colonies against an unstoppable force, sir, Haisu said softly. Do you really think we can win? Daehyun thought about lying, about giving her hope, but she deserved the truth. No, he said. But we can make them remember us. We can make them bleed. And maybe that will be enough. The stars hung silent and cold in the viewport. Somewhere out there the devourers were coming, and humanity was waiting.